Okay. Okay, thank you very much. So it's been a while since I spoke in a university hall, so yeah, looks good. So I'm going to talk to you about the tsunami, about all of those IoTs and all of those devices that are a bit forsaken or that people don't think about. So let me start with a few really short questions, and I appreciate it Saturday at 3 p.m., so try to do my best here. How many of you believe that well, let's start with that. How many have a CMDB at work? A CMDB. Okay. How many of you think the CMDB is accurate? Okay. That's a really good response. So look at it this way. If I would ask the same question 10 years ago, I think that about the same number of people would say that they have a CMDB, but then most of them would say, yes, we have an amazing CMDB. Yes, we have a good CMDB, or at least, yes, we have some problems, but we'll fix them. We are on our way to fix that. Thing is that the world kind of changed since. So the explosion of those IoTs, well, what's an IoT? Any examples here, ideas? What's an IoT device? Cell phones? Electric meter. Okay. Yes, it is. Yeah. That projector, exactly. That projector, that's not a smart TV. It's not a TV, but yeah. Actually, I've seen some of those smart boards that have the cameras on both sides, right? That you could just capture what's on that. Same thing. But these are just, these are office environment or lecture hall environments. What about your elevator? What about your HVAC system? What about, what's the funkiest thing I've seen lately that actually connects home? Anybody heard about the fish tank example?
All sorts of
medical care, everything is an IoT. Whatever you touch is an IoT. Fish tank. So, as you see, I have a presentation. I have many slides. I hate slides. So, I'll go through some slides too, but I hate slides. When you look at, there was a casino in Vegas that had, well, still has it, a huge aquarium with lots of amazing fish, lots of expensive fish, and gorgeous fish. And this fish had a small sensor that was supposed to measure how hot the water was, right? That's really important measurement. Okay. How much do you think that sensor cost? Yeah, $5, $10, something like that. Something you would get from eBay. I'm sure there are casinos, so they didn't get it from eBay, so they pay 50 instead of 5. That's fine. They connected it to the guest network because fish, I guess, are guests. And they had to connect it because that's how those fish, that's how that sensor connected to the internet. Okay. And there was a whole NOC somewhere in China, I don't know where it is, that was actually monitoring that water and made sure that the fish will still be alive. What do you think happened? So usually when I tell the story, somebody would say, fish died is a nice thing. Usually somebody would say, did the fish burn? No, the fish did not burn. What happened, I actually went to see that aquarium, the fish are okay. What actually happened there was that somebody came with his cell phone and connected a tiny computer to that and used Bluetooth in order to connect to that $5 sensor. Now, this $5 sensor, you might imagine, doesn't really have too many security features, right? I mean, it's a sensor, it protects fish. So, connected via Bluetooth, nobody cares about that, was in the network, was in the fish tank. Then from there, he went into the guest network. From the guest network, he went into the corporate network because that's what people do nowadays. The distinction between guest and corporate network is just for show. If you know what you're doing, it takes you 5 minutes. And got into the database and got all the list, like the one thing that a casino has that's the most expensive thing, which is the list of its high rollers. Okay, you can Google it later, true story. So, fish tank, $5 devices, everything that explodes in the world. So, yeah, I do have some slides. So let's just go through some examples here. Smart office, right? Looking at all the devices in your office. How do you know if your printer is malicious? Why do you care? Same thing like anything else, right? If the printer is doing something wrong, it will get into your network and will get to wherever the most important, valuable, whatever things is. Not to mention, if you really need to print something and it doesn't work, that's not good. Hospitals, right? Healthcare. That's where it becomes just not funny, right? So when you're looking at patient monitors and we're looking at infusion pumps, right? These are true examples that happens in hospitals in the US. So when you look at a monitor, just think about the possibilities here. I mean, monitor saves lives, right? It will give you an alert when somebody needs attention. That's not funny anymore. So what happens if that monitor just doesn't alert? What happens if it's a famous person and that monitor, instead of monitoring, would just send all the vitals information to someone in the cloud, right? Privacy issues. Infusion pump, it is a funny story now because the patient is actually alive and well. Again, true story, there was an infusion pump that was connected to a person. And that person was not in a good state. And that infusion pump was compromised, and it was discovered that it's compromised. But they couldn't take it off because it was actually really important. So they actually, for a whole week, they literally didn't know what to do. I mean, taking it off is bad. Keeping it is, bad too, because you don't know what's going to happen. They actually had the nurse 24/7 looking at that person with that infusion pump. I really did not want to be that person's family. There was a nurse 24/7 sitting there and making sure that the patient doesn't deteriorate because of that infusion pump that they didn't know what's going to do. Okay. Last one of those, robotic arm industry, OT environment. All of our manufacturing things, and I have a few funnier examples about manufacturing later. But all of everything that's being manufactured works in a protocol called SCADA. Anybody here know SCADA? Ooh, that's actually a lot for that question. Okay. SCADA is, old, right? There are several protocols, there are a million protocols inside SCADA. Some of them are newer, some of them are older, but when you look at the factory, most of them have older equipment because guess what? It's really expensive to replace that equipment. And 20 years ago, not to mention 50 years ago, but 20 years ago, when manufactured $1 million worth of a manufacturing machine, nobody cared about security. Didn't exist then. Nowadays, the newer things would have newer protocols that are encrypted, that have lots of interesting things. You can actually look at the automobile industry as the evolvement of those machines, right? Anybody knows what happens when you, any car that you're using, when you hit on the brake? Yeah. What? Exactly. Exactly. It's literally the pedal itself doesn't do anything. It triggers a command. It's not SCADA because it's a car, doesn't matter, but it's the same idea, right? Just trigger the command and then something breaks. Who protects that? Well, there are companies that do that. That's not us. But that's the evolvement. Things there are way more encrypted and way more protected. Okay, a few numbers. Look at those numbers of devices. Green device, just going from 2010 to 2021, I have numbers for 2025 and 2030. This is actually a Gartner graph. The green is what we call the normal devices. Okay? Normal devices increase, obviously, things evolve, but not too much. Normal devices will be computers, PC, servers, things like that. A normal growth. Then you have all of your BYODs, laptops, tablets, smartphones. I'm not that old, but when I was in college, nobody had a laptop. Nobody could afford, we had laptops. Nobody could afford it. There was like nothing there. And 2 years later, everybody came to class with a laptop, right? I guess it's the same thing now. All of that is exploding. But IoTs, 25 billion devices in 2021. They're talking about 1 trillion devices by 2030. 1 trillion from 25 billion, which by itself is crazy. All of those devices are unagentable. So when you're looking at 10 years ago again, and again, 10 years, not 100, not 20, not 50, 10 years ago, 5 years ago, when people talk about protecting networks, protecting devices, usually the next word that came was agents, right? How many of you have agents on their laptops at work? Okay, makes sense. Every corporate, it basically means, hey, I work in a corporate, right? Every corporate would have, 1 agent, 2 agents, 25 agents, whatever it is for different purposes that would protect your computer. Better, worse, whatever, that's fine, but would protect your computer. You can't put any agents of those. If we're looking at that projector right there, you cannot put an agent on that. That's what we like to call the unagentable device. Okay, those are devices that you cannot put agents on. 95% of the devices by 2025 are going to be unagentable. Okay. Before we go to that, so again, my name is Ziv. I hope I just got a bit of your attention with all kinds of war stories. I have many more to continue with. I'm from Armis, and I'm heading solution architecture in the East Coast and strategical accounts. That means that, and we'll talk later about what we do and why we're doing. I just want you to remember one thing as I continue my story. What we do is listen to traffic. With any story that I continue saying and telling you about, think about the fact that every device that I'm talking about cannot have agent. Every device that I'm talking about has traffic. We listen to the traffic and give protection. Any example that I'm going to give, towards the end, there will be, okay, what we would have done any differently then. The reason I'm saying it now and not waiting to the end is a short story I like to tell those things. Why did I join Armis? Well, great place to work at, but beside that, I used to work for 5 years in a small startup that was in the telecommunication. Completely not cyber, had nothing to do with cyber. And we were managing cellular antennas. Ever thought about the cellular antennas around wherever you are? Right? There are so many of them. Some of them are hidden, look like trees. Some of them are way too obvious. 8% of the power consumption in the world is cellular antennas. 8%. Yeah, that's crazy. The reason I'm saying that my old company used to do manage capacity of the antennas and saving energy. My pitch used to be, hey, if you're going to deploy us all over the world, we will save 10,000 Niagara Falls a year. Okay. My point is, I had a project in Indonesia. And I went to Indonesia and I needed to connect to their networks, go into the main part of their corporate network that actually manages the antennas. We won't get into all the details there, but just to that one place from which I can power off and manage all the antennas in all of Indonesia. And I needed a VPN. Would you give me a VPN? Anybody? To that one server that can power off all the antennas in your country. So I can tell you that some American companies did give me VPN, but wouldn't tell you which ones. But to go back to Indonesia, they didn't want to give me a VPN. I flew to Indonesia. I met with the CTO of one of the biggest Indonesian cellular companies. And 3 bottles of wine later, he signed a document saying, okay, you can get a VPN. Okay, true story. So why am I telling all of that story? Well, we started working with this network, and we powered off those antennas. We did whatever we needed. A week later, we discovered that by accident, we actually powered off also all the cameras in that building. By accident, connected to the network. Who knows where it goes, where it continues. So that's when I came back and said, okay, I need to switch to a different place to where we actually protect from those things. That's another example of something that we would have done better and protect from. That would have been discovered in like 5 minutes. Okay, 84% of security professionals believe that IoTs are more vulnerable than computers. Yeah, I should have asked you first before saying 84%, but okay. 67% of enterprises have experienced IoT security incidents, just like I've said before, and 74% believe that they have inadequate security for IoTs. Okay, throwing some numbers here. Cyber attacks on IoT devices surged by 300%. Don't you like these big slides of, scaring you about something? And Microsoft warns Russian hackers can breach secure networks. Okay. Anybody heard about those guys? Strontium, or I'm sure it's pronounced differently because it's in Russian. Nobody? Okay. This is a nation state. This is a group backed by the Russian government. Everything that I'm saying now is not top secret, whatever this was actually published by Microsoft. So the Russians are really good at doing those things. And you might think, okay, so they are against these governments. So not to get into which ones, but against these governments, so what do I care, or what can I do about it? Well, according to those statistics, 20% of what they did was actually intended against governments around the world. 80% was not. True story. Anybody knows who Mondelez is? Really? Nobody knows their name. Anybody knows what Oreo is? Come on, more people eat Oreos. Come on.
Cookie?
The cookie, yeah.
Yes, of course.
Okay. Mondelez makes Oreos. They make like half of the chocolate in the world. Okay? And all kinds of other snacks and whatnot. In I want to say 2015, might have been a year or two before or after, Mondelez was attacked. Who would attack chocolate makers? And they make chocolate. Specifically a factory that they own was attacked, and its only problem was, or the reason that it was attacked supposedly, this factory has the misfortune to be placed in the Ukraine. Now they have over 100 factories around the world. And that factory and Ukraine was attacked, globally. And that factory was one of them. And if you can Google later, WannaCry attack in Mondelez or Mondelez Ukraine or any other combination of that, you will see that. Okay, public record. It got into their Ukraine factory. It shut down the Ukraine factory. Can you just imagine if there's no more Oreos in the world? There was a global. They didn't manufacture Oreos in that factory. I don't know what exact type of chocolate they made. But can you just imagine the world shortage of that specific type of chocolate because somebody attacked a chocolate factory in the Ukraine? Okay. That was WannaCry. Anybody knows WannaCry? Oh, that's actually nice. Okay. Does WannaCry exist anymore? Okay. So if you go to manufacturers, if you talk to the CTOs or the CISOs, and you kind of mention the word WannaCry, they would knock on wood, they would jump 3 times, they would hide under the chair. Everybody is really afraid of that. And the reason is, it's kind of like the plague. Was supposed to be eradicated about 2 years ago. And yet, we keep seeing that again and again and again. I was actually doing a POC with this company. I wouldn't say that company's name, but I was doing a POC with the company just last month. And we started really small in a tiny lab that they had somewhere. And like 5 minutes into being there, hey, you have WannaCry. And yeah, the lab manager literally went under a chair when I said that. Okay. So let's get a bit in depth, well, not too much, but in depth into one of the more interesting attacks. And the reason I say it's more interesting is that actually we at Armis discovered this specific vulnerability, and I'm about to talk about. So who knows what VxWorks is? Higher? Like, really? Okay, very good. VxWorks is the most, okay, let me ask differently. What is the most common operating system in the world right now? Exactly, yeah, sorry about that. So I was shocked when I heard that. When we start with that, I mean, what's the most, operating system? Windows, Linux. Don't want to get into that fight. I have a Mac, but I don't know, Android, iOS for that matter, whatever it is. So no, but not even close. Okay, so there are over 2 billion devices that are running VxWorks. VxWorks is actually there are over 2 billion devices that are running older version of VxWorks. There are over 10 billion devices that are running VxWorks right now. VxWorks is a simple, an amazing, yet simple operating system that literally everything that's an IoT has. So this projector, I really don't know, but most likely is running VxWorks. Okay. All of your printers are running VxWorks. All of your Xerox machines, fridges, lots of switches, by the way, and a lot more. We'll get into that. So, Forbes, when was that? July 29th, published that. The reason this is July 29th is that every year we publish some new vulnerabilities that we found before Black Hat. Everybody does that. So that's when that came in. 2 billion IoT devices that got a critical update now. Critical update now means, well, that it is critical and they should update it now. And then we're going back to the medical part. Look at those devices. Anybody recognize those? All kinds of medical pumps there, right? That is also running VxWorks. Okay, because again, they're simple, I'm sure they're doing amazing things, but they're simple IoTs, right? Running the same thing. Decade-old code is putting millions of critical devices at risk. Okay, so let's get a bit into that vulnerability. And this is a vulnerability that we came with. It's called Urgent 11. Anybody knows why? Anybody heard about Urgent 11? Okay, not too many. Okay, well, it's bad for us, but it's good because you won't get bored. Anybody knows why, of those who knows it, why it is called Urgent 11? So, sorry? It's what? Oh, exit code 11. No. It's actually, No, it's actually, it's a combination of 11 vulnerabilities. So, Urgent 11. Marketing, guys. So, so what does it actually do? So, if we look at any type of device, or IoTs for that matter, there are basically 3 layers. We have the physical layer, which is the Ethernet port itself, or Wi-Fi for that matter, we'll call that a layer. Then there is the network stack layer, which is the network and transportation. So basically everything that runs in the network. And then we have the application layer, which is, well, the layer of the application. Okay. Everything that's in the actual code, right, that will run at the application. If something is a vulnerability in the physical layer, it is really bad because then you need to replace the actual cables. I mean, that's crazy. If anything happens in the application level, then it's usually a patch, right? Because, okay, there is something wrong with the code. It will impact something very specific, right? So you just protect that. It's usually easier, and you'd usually have different layers that will protect you from that. So Urgent 11 is in the network layer, meaning that if a device is vulnerable to Urgent 11, all the attacks will happen through the network layer. It means that it runs through all of your firewalls. So let me say that again. Traffic that goes through the firewall without stopping. Isn't that what firewalls are for? To stop traffic going from A to B? Well, not at Urgent 11. So basically, and I won't get into all the subversions, whatever, many versions of VxWorks are vulnerable to that. Over 2 billion devices in the world. And the whole idea is that attackers are bypassing security. Traditional security is just a fancy name for firewall. So we're bypassing firewalls and just going through that and get into the devices. So if there is one device that is vulnerable inside your network, an attacker can go through the firewall, get into that device, and spread all over the network. As simple or alarming as that. So what is impacted? Well, I said that. Everything that has VxWorks, right? But everything that is SCADA-oriented, all the industrial controllers all over the world, patient monitoring, MRI machines, firewalls, VoIP phones, printers, I have some list of manufacturers. I'm allowed to put it all here because we actually announced it to them a few months before we published it to the world, right? And they're actually... And this is the story of how we did that. So look at that. This actually happened at DEF CON last year. So I think it was DEF CON. Anyway, at Biohacking Village, that's where it was. So our CTO stood there. You don't see him on the picture, but that was right there. And he was sitting with the CTO of Alaris. And that's why we're showing their logo right there. I mean, true story. He was sitting right there, and he told him, let me show you something. And he took his laptop and broke into the device in like 5 seconds. And just to show that he broke into it, see what it, don't see it really well, but here on the zoomed in picture, it says communication error. So basically it took him 5 seconds to make this medical device stop working. Okay. And that device was a new device that was shown in that, in that Biohacking Village. I mean, it was the newest, latest, whatever they had, and 5 seconds communication error. Then we came into the hospitals and announced it to everybody. We actually took, I think it's 3 months between telling them and announcing to the world. We worked with the FDA and DHS and with Alaris before that announcement and made sure that everybody is aware of that and that on the day that we announce it, they would actually have a patch already ready for that, right? Not just start making the patches then. But, so the vulnerability is only VxWorks. And then it became a bit interesting. So 2 weeks after that, there is a big hospital chain that we work with. And we came to them and said, hey, you have us installed, and said, yeah, we're very happy with you. And we said, so this is the list of all of your devices that are vulnerable to Urgent 11. Please go ahead and, patch them because it's so dangerous. And we like to do that on a Friday, so that way they have to work on the weekend. And only for those we want to work on the weekend. So we did that. And then the next day, Saturday, we get, they usually like to, call us back the next day during the weekend because we started, I guess, worthwhile. So they called us back Saturday and they called shenanigan. And they said, this device right here that you said is vulnerable is not. And we said, why? We found Urgent 11. We're kind of good at saying who is vulnerable and who is not. Nobody else knows anything about it because we just came out with that. So why are you saying that? Said, well, we contacted the manufacturer of that device. And they said that this device does not use VxWorks. So therefore it's not vulnerable and literally called shenanigan. Was not a good weekend, I can tell you that. It was new, right? So kind of, okay, maybe we have a bug in that mechanism that discovers the devices or anything else. I mean, it makes sense. So we came back and said, so we actually checked it out, verified, then came back and said, okay, we found a problem. Actually, Urgent 11 is way bigger than what we thought. VxWorks bought many companies throughout its life. 20 years ago, they bought a different company that I won't say its name, but they bought a different company. The bug actually started at that company. So all of the older devices that do not use VxWorks, just use that company before it was bought by VxWorks, actually also have that bug. And that was that medical device. Okay? So it keeps expanding. Actually, every month since that summer, we found some and published some more things that came in with Urgent 11. So you can go to our website. I'm not done yet, but you can go to our website and see all of those reports and patches and everything about Urgent 11. And it's really fascinating when you get into that and see some more things. And the interesting part is that it's every day. It's everything that we touch every day that is vulnerable to that. Okay. So let's continue with a few other examples here. So we talked about WannaCry, right? And WannaCry for chocolate. So what about WannaCry for MRIs? True story. So all of this, okay, I didn't look at this slide. The reality of real IoT, what actually lays behind that is real customers of ours. Okay, so all the stories that I'm telling you now are not things that I read on Google, that are actually our customers. MRI machines that are connecting to the internet. Who knows what is running or what operating system is running on MRI? Come on, it's on the slide. Windows XP. Windows XP. MRI machines are actually pretty old computers that have amazing things connected to them, right? Being an MRI machine, but from our point of view, it's a Windows XP machine. That's what it is. So I don't have to tell you how unpatchable or how vulnerable Windows XP is, being so old, right? Not to get into Linux, Windows things, just being that old. More than that, it's under warranty. It cannot be patched unless it is patched by the manufacturer. You can't, I actually went to one of the hospitals and say, I'm pretty ignorant there. Why can't you upgrade the damn Windows XP? I mean, why? I said, well, we can't. It's the FDA not approved us actually doing anything. Like everything that you do in a hospital has to be FDA approved, right? And manufacturer approved. And I said, well, we can't do anything about it. Okay. Having said that, that MRI machine is connected to the manufacturer in order to get updates. A bit of an oxymoron there, but anyway, it is. Connected to the internet, Windows XP. Do I need to tell you what's going on when that happens, right? So WannaCry got into the hospital, got into that. MRI machines started connecting to anywhere in the environment using SMB protocol and infected everything around. Okay. I told you I don't like slides, so I'll tell you a different story about an MRI which is not on the slide. Another true story. This is a hospital in, well, I wouldn't say where, but it's let's call it the East Coast. And what they did was, well, I start with, we discovered it throughout the story, but I'll tell you what actually happened. So this lady, that they found her, I know her name. This lady was bored one night at 2 a.m. and she wanted to go on Facebook. She works at the hospital, and she wanted to go on Facebook. I don't know why. I guess she doesn't have a phone or a tablet or whatever. And she had to do it from a computer, and she had to choose the MRI machine to go on Facebook. I really want to meet her. And so she went to that MRI. Now, MRIs are connected to the network, or that MRI anyway, is connected to the network using Wi-Fi. I don't know why. And she went to that and, literally, Facebook.com, and it didn't work. You know why? Well, somebody did his job well in that hospital, and it had a firewall and other solutions and whatnot that basically, that segmented the medical network into, so you can't go on Facebook. Kind of makes sense. And I'm all into network segmentation. It's an amazing thing. It's not good enough, but it's really good. So she really wanted to go on Facebook at that 2 a.m. So she changed the wireless network to Starbucks. It's a hospital. Every hospital has a Starbucks, right? So now we have a Windows XP computer, MRI machine, connected to Starbucks. So she spent about half an hour, this is all what we found in the logs, she spent about half an hour doing whatever she did on Facebook. Then she was really good about it. She connected back to the medical network and, went back to doing her stuff. No. She was working there. She was working. Yeah. I hope patients don't have that access to the MRI machine. So anyway, 3 weeks later, so everything is okay, right? I mean, it's stupid, but it's okay because it's back on the medical network. All is good. 3 weeks later, there was an outage in the medical network for like 2 seconds. So nobody really paid attention to it. Okay, it shouldn't happen, but okay, it did. Few seconds, all was back on, all is good. Except that the MRI machine switched to the Starbucks network. So now you have MRI tests being sent out on the Starbucks network, public network. Smart TVs. So we talked about projectors. Let's talk about TVs. Every boardroom has smart TVs. Not every. Most boardrooms have really top secret personal information, things that we don't want to get anywhere, right? This is another true story. Smart TV was compromised and with a malware. That malware, instead of trying to spread in the network, started spreading using Wi-Fi. Smart TVs they all have Chromecast nowadays, or other casts for that matter. They're broadcasting an SSID, right? They're actually doing the same for broadcasting for Bluetooth, so you can connect through that too. So they just started broadcasting that. Whatever was open, just caught it and got the malware by that. So you might be asking, okay, what did Armis do about it? Right? Because, and again, and I'll get to the end, like in the next 5 minutes about what we're doing about that, but, it's not in the network. And I started with saying protecting the network. So how did we find out that? So people don't know that, but I always try to, the access point. I don't see whose access point that is, but yeah, it's right there. I don't see who's the manufacturer, but anyway, most likely it's Cisco or Aruba because we are in the US. So people don't know that those access points actually have a model that scans all the Wi-Fi in the area on 2.4 and 5 gigahertz. That means that if I'm using this computer right here, I'm not in the guest network here. I'm not on any network. If I'm connecting it to my phone's hotspot, it will know. If I'm connecting it over Bluetooth because I have a keyboard that I connect to the computer, it will know. Nothing is connected to this access point, but it will still know about this access. Same for Zigbee, same for any type of information, of traffic that's 2.4 or 5 gigahertz. That's how we know about it. We come to these places, we look at that information, we say, hey, did you know that X, Y, and Z connected to your smart TV? Usually the answer is, what? My favorite boardroom story is actually about, it's one of our first clients. We came into an office environment, nothing special, not medical, not OT, nothing. And we did a nice POC, we connected ourselves, we got spam traffic, right? Copied the traffic of the network, listening to that network. And then we came back after a week, we kind of gave results and we showed the dashboard and we went through alerts and we said you have this and you have that and this is what you do, and it was really interesting. And then the last one was, and by the way, that tablet that you have in your boardroom, this is, and then they stopped us, which tablet? Said, well, you have a tablet in the boardroom that's sending traffic every night at 2 a.m. to somewhere. And that somewhere is outside of your network. I don't know where. It's in a cloud. And they say, well, what tablet? We don't have that. We don't have a tablet. There's no tablet in that boardroom. I said, well, I don't know. I know there is a tablet. I know it's connected to the access point called the boardroom. So either you have another access point called the boardroom, which I hope you don't, or you have a tablet connected to your boardroom. So they literally, we were sitting at that boardroom, somebody stood up, went, look at all there was some desks around, there were some closets, and found the tablet. Tablet was there like forever, and was sending that information, it was recording whatever was in the office, and send it up to wherever it was. Okay? So this is why, yeah. So this is the cloud. Let me jump. Yeah, okay. Last example, and then we'll go to the last slide. Actually, no. I'll stay with the TVs. Last true story. This is one of my favorites. It's not cybersecurity though. It's a bit more funny than that. So, Friday, 7 p.m. I'm in the middle of a POC with the most important client in the world, must-win project, everything has to work. Okay. Again, Friday, 7 p.m., right? And I get this phone call and I said, well, there is this lady in this, I don't know why, again, it was a lady, I later met her. And said, there is this lady on the 4th floor of this building in California, in which we were installed. And she says that internet is really sluggish and there are issues in the network. And I really wanted to say, well, she might want to go home. I mean, it's Friday, 7 p.m., 4 p.m. in California, fine, but okay, let's call it a day, a week. And I couldn't do that, so we opened the console together. And we saw a few alerts. So the first alert that we saw was abnormal behavior for a device of type smart TV. So there are a few things there. First of all, a smart TV should do very specific things, right? I mean, it should, well, show something, right? It should download traffic, because if you're using, I don't know, Netflix or whatnot, it should download that. It should download some updates, right? Software updates for the TV, hopefully. Not much more than that. So this smart TV was uploading 100 gigs a day. And there were 4 of those in the building. Uploading. So that was one alert. Second alert was a policy violation. So they basically, according to their regulation of that company, smart TVs should not be connected to the network at all. That's whatever, that's what they said. Some companies do it this way, some other way, but they had a strict regulation, no TV should be connected to the network. And yet it was. So that's what the alert, that's the second alert that came. Third alert was abnormal behavior for the network. Nothing should upload 100 gigs a day, right? So one alert was, hey, a smart TV shouldn't behave that way. Another alert was, hey, nothing should behave that way. Okay, just take a look at that. Anyway, what happened was, and that's why I'm saying it's so funny, because it was not an attack. I'll get to the end of it. It's kind of like the fish that didn't burn. So it's kind of the same thing. It was not an attack. The Russians were not, attacking that office in California, or nobody else attacked it. What happened was that somebody connected that TV to the network. Again, he shouldn't have, right? I said it's against the law, against their regulation. And yet he did. That TV tried to get an update, as it should. It was blocked by their NAC. So now the TV tried, because it was not connected to the network, it didn't have a certificate. So then the TV tried to get a certificate and failed because TVs are not receiving certificates. So then he tried to update the software and failed. And then tried to get a certificate and failed. And he did it quite faster than, my rhythm of speaking, and got to 100 gigs a day. This is a really big client. So they're not just a big client of ours, they're also a big client of Samsung. Okay, it was a Samsung TV. So they reached out to Samsung and said, what are you doing? And told them the story. And Samsung said, no way, that's not happening. So they came back to us and said, hey, well, first of all, you saw your network, so something did happen. And B, hey, here are the logs of everything, because I see everything, I listen to all the traffic, I show everything. Here are my logs. So they went back to Samsung. Samsung came back and said, well, we didn't do it. There's nothing wrong with it. The TV acts exactly as it should be. Here's a patch, by the way. Okay. So, not to spend all the weekend, I'm going to jump over all of that and get to the last point in 2 minutes. 2, not 3, I hope. So, why am I speaking about all of that, except that IoTs are fun? What are we doing? So we are Armis, and we are basically coming to big corporates, and we are giving 3 things. Discover, analyze, and protect. Full discovery of all the devices in your network, everything. Computer servers, BYOD device, IoT device, OT devices, medical, banking. Whatever it is, if it has a pulse, now, if it has a MAC address or an IP, we see that, right? That's why I started with asking who has a CMDB. Who thinks a CMDB is good? Nobody. This is the only source of truth because it listens to the traffic. Nobody can hide. Second thing is understanding what is this device doing. So, okay, I discover the device and I see it has traffic. Great. I am able to compare that to my knowledge base and I'm able to show what type of device it is. This is a camera. This is a dishwasher. This is a projector. This is a whatever it is. And I can show how it should behave like. So going back to the TV, I know that it shouldn't behave that way. Going back to a camera that has botnet, I know it shouldn't behave that way. Going back to the MRI machine, I know that it shouldn't behave that way. That's the strength of what we're showing. Completely passive, no agents, not installing anything, not doing anything, listening to the traffic, knowing what the device is, what it should behave like, and saying, hey, that's not good. That's abnormal, that's malicious, that's a breach of policy. And the last part is protecting and saying, okay, you got the malicious device, let's kick it out of your network. Okay, I'm still within my 2 minutes, so questions? Okay, yes, please.
How are you listening for traffic?
So I'm getting 2 sources of traffic. One is two sources of traffic. One is my your wireless LAN controller, just read-only show commands. And the second and most important is a span port or tap if you have it, but basically span port copying or receiving a copy of your traffic. That's why I call it listen, because we're not in the middle, we're not poking the devices, we're not trying to reach out to the device in any way. We just receive that traffic from your span, listen to it, and do everything. Yeah?
How does this account for all the new cloud services that are coming out?
So, first of all, we are in the cloud. So, there's a nice cloud picture there. We put something on site, we get that traffic, we parse it, we reduce it, get only the metadata and send it up to our cloud. So that's one thing. Second thing, nothing stays only in the cloud. So it's good enough that, let's say that you have 1 million servers in the cloud and they're connecting to your actual network, because you need to get out of the cloud one day. Connect to your actual network, that's how we'll get all the traffic coming from the cloud. By the way, roadmap pretty soon we're going to just duplicate everything to the cloud itself and kind of put, instead of a appliance and like a physical thing, we'll duplicate that into the cloud too. Okay. Oh, yes. It's nothing. So we're usually doing, it's either virtual machine, just 4 cores, something really small, or we're using a 1U half-deep tiny server. So it's really simple. And the reason it's so small is that it doesn't do anything. It just takes the traffic, reduces it, and sends it up to the cloud. So I can tell you that the cloud environment is a monster one, but you don't care about that. Okay. Thank you so much. And